A very good evening to everybody watching. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Toivo Njabela. Tonight we are trying to unpack what has dominated the news this week, and that is the suspension of the managing editor of New Era newspaper, Jonathan Beukes. And to help me understand this intricate situation is Zoe Titus. She is the director of the Namibia Media Trust, as well as veteran journalist Wanda Guchu. Thank you, colleagues, for making time. It has been a very crazy week, really. Yeah, so, Zoe, I know that you've issued a statement this week also delving into that subject. What is your impression of what has transpired at New Era?
Trevor, I think it's a most unfortunate development. And it comes, just about a week after our head of state publicly reaffirmed his commitment to press freedom, media freedom in general. So it's a bit of a contradiction in terms, and it was very important for us, firstly, to just make it public our concern about this development and what I consider are far-ranging implications for media freedom and freedom of expression in general, not just for the media, but for Namibians more broadly.
Absolutely. Wanda, your thoughts? It's the first time that something like this has ever happened. I mean, journalists have always been suspended or even fired, but not over stories that they did.
But we shouldn't forget that the New Era in 2005, 2006, Daud was also asked to leave.
Yeah,
right?
But it was, they're saying it was,
later.
It said it was because of absence from work. That was the allegation by the institution.
Yeah.
Absence from work and verbal abuse of colleagues. But I remember there was also a time when there were concerns about a letter that he published.
Yes.
That it contained tribal connotations, and somehow he failed to tone down some of those things.
Yeah.
But so it doesn't wash down your point.
Yeah, that is the bottom line here.
Yeah.
It is also concerning that it had to get to where it is now, where we are discussing the suspension. But shocking as it might be, this must give us time and space now to try and look at the media freedoms that we claim and demand, the media independence that we also speak so glowingly about. Do we understand these terms? And this is also the time when we need to search word. We need to ground every media house and understand what exactly do they stand for.
Yeah.
Because everyone else will be stepping back to say we got nothing to do with what happened at the New Era. So I wish I knew what went on there until the suspension came, but I don't. Whether there were warnings, whether there were meetings that were held, and then the editorial policy was also read out to say this is what we stand for as a state-controlled media, state-funded media, which some people would want to say is funded by public money, which is true. So, but what does it stand for?
Yeah.
So the biggest issue should now give us that time to say, where do we stand? A claim is a claim. The president can go out and say, this is what I stand for, but what one stands for and what one does, those might be two different things.
Yeah. So, Zoe, for me, the issue is that it seems glaringly clear that the suspension was based on a specific, or it was triggered by a specific story, which is really to demand transparency within the judiciary. It's one thing to say, I mean, like Wanda is saying, maybe there's been a build up to that, but when a newspaper says, we apologize for this story, we shouldn't have called people lieutenants of the judge president. We shouldn't have said this, and we therefore apologize for that story. And we have taken corrective measures internally, which proven to be actually perhaps the suspension of the managing editor. Is it more scarier that it's not based on a trend, but seems to be pinned on a particular story?
You see, that is the issue that I think we also try to reflect on in our statement. The fact is that we are making assumptions about the reasons for the suspension. We have ideas, we have followed media content coverage, so we are being left to speculate. Because there is no transparency in this process. And I believe that New Era management and board, we can demand, and they owe us the transparency in this process. And particularly even if it is affecting, the highest tier of employees within the group within the system. Because, I mean, if that is going to happen to your managing editor, what is going to happen to an intern or, first tier journalist or junior journalist, if that is a kind of action that can be taken there? So now we are left to speculate. And for any journalist knows that you can't base your reporting on pure speculation. You have to verify information. Yeah. And before issuing our statement, I attempted to do that, to verify the information, because I work from the principle of, cause no harm. We were not going to issue a statement if it was going to further incriminate or potentially harm the person to whom we are trying to show allegiance or with whom we are trying to show solidarity. So, I mean, we did make that step. And I think in speaking with him, it was very clear that he is not able to disclose also on his part, the content of the letter that he received or the context of the dismissal. That's worrying.
Yeah. In fairness, Zoe, the CEO, Mr. Maletsky, did say that it's an internal matter, because when you speak about transparency, it's also a labor matter.
Issue, yes.
And that has been sort of New Era's defense mechanism to say, look, we can't delve much into the thing, it's an employee-employer issue. But I think the magnitude of the whole thing might be warranted a step further and say, look, this is more than just it's really an unprecedented thing.
And it's because of the importance and the magnitude of this issue that, in all fairness, some level of transparency is warranted. Not only transparency, but accountability too. Remember, this is New Era, it is a publicly funded institution, and quite rightly, as taxpayers, we have certain, a range of powers in where we can demand some accountability and transparency. So yes, I think it could have been dealt with better. When this kind of thing happens, it makes so many people uneasy. Not only the public, but journalists, the broader sector as well. And it's an issue of a duty of care to ensure that, they don't create undue disturbance or pressure amongst readers, viewers, and the general public.
Wonder we have seen snippets of discontent, if you like, among government officials. The ED has, some months ago, said publicly of course, he's allowed to express his views, I suppose, like any other reader. But of course, his voice comes with more weight than mine. So he said, for example, on Twitter the other time that New Era has no business delving into certain things. I think that was at the height of New Era reporting on the NAST squabbles at the time. And my colleagues at Namibian Sun did a story about it. So is this something that has been a long time coming?
Yeah, it's been, but before I answer you, I just want to chip in to what Zoe was saying. I read their apology, and although they did not release a statement to say these are the reasons why we have suspended him, the apology was so clear. The editorial and a series of stories that we have been running.
Yeah.
And if you go back to I read newspapers every morning to analyze them. There are quite a number. And I was able to pinpoint to say, it might be this, and this, and this, and this, and this. So they were so clear to say, and they mentioned the word apology more than 5 times. We apologize. We apologize.
That front page apology, when I read it the first time, I thought, yo, this is intense. And then that's page 1.
It was intense.
Then page 3 is our Minister of ICT talking about responsible journalism. I become very worried when I hear those 2 words together. Responsible journalism. Professional journalism, yes, we can have a long discussion about that.
Yeah.
But not responsible journalism.
Yeah. So the apology gives us an idea, a clear picture of what it was.
Yeah.
So it was a build-up. So somebody somewhere might have counting. This is story number 1, story number 2, story number 3. Now, if I come to what you have just asked me, once again, we need to be so clear what is New Era's mandate. Now, if a public official comes up and says, New Era has no business to report about NAST, what are they saying? Are they saying New Era should not inform? Are they not supposed to cover? And while we are discussing this, I need to reiterate this, that this must give us an opportunity of asking ourselves, what is New Era's mandate?
Yeah, so the New Era mandate is essentially a developmental mandate, really to advance development, but development is also a very intricate subject. If there's corruption, there can be no, where there's corruption thriving, there can be no corruption. Development. And if I'm exposing that corruption, it ought to be perceived as me really saying, let's weed out these things, let's expose these things so that development can be advanced. But if you're telling me now that, okay, because what we are reading in the papers this week is that, there's been concerns about how New Era is writing about other public entities. But is it just a question of not writing or writing about other public entities, or must we actually delve into those specific articles and say, but this was about another public entity, but warranted? So where do you draw the line in that case? Because the mandate really is to say, okay, report on government business and also advance developmental stories. But developmental stories is not just about, there's now a clinic in Ahangwena opened by the minister. It's also to say there are no medicines at that thing, at that clinic, and therefore the community there cannot thrive socially because they're denied of that basic right.
I think, Trevor, there's a misconception, a big one, where if we talk about public funded, a minister might think that New Era is there to whitewash whatever wrongs are being done, right? Because it's funded by the public. So it's under the government's control. There is a misconception, and someone must come and dispel it to say, no, New Era's mandate here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I also remember, not so long ago, you were still there. There was also a concern, and that concern came from Parliament, right? Where they were saying, we don't understand the reporting at the New Era now. Is it still a state-owned paper, a public-funded paper? So those concerns, unless they are addressed so that whoever goes to work to New Era, they will know this is the boundary. Now, if you don't know, right, you as a journalist, you want to report honestly, truthfully, and you don't want to be restricted as long as what you are reporting is the truth, right? So once again, some might say the truth then is something else also. But we need to be so clear to say, I am saying this because there's also a misconception that the independent media, right, which is not under government control, they are free. I don't buy into it. Somebody somewhere calls the shots. Now it's independent media in the sense that it's privately owned, right? But is it independent from the owner? Is it independent from the corporate world? Is it independent from the donor, those who funds it, the donors? So this is the conversation I think the Beukes issue must throw us into, so that we can guide. My biggest fear is that whoever, if Beukes is to leave, if Christoph is to leave, those who will go to New Era, they will be so scared to cover stories. They will be seeking guardians from time to time from those who are at the top to say, can we go with this story? Can we go with this story? So that kind of restriction is not needed. So this is exactly where this conversation now is. Well, the suspension is there. Let New Era deal with it. But as the NMT, Zoe, and the Editors Forum, the association, what is the conversation now? We need to draw lines so that when another suspension comes, we will say no. This is what we understand. As it is now, there's a gray area here. So it's all over. So this conversation must say, so where do we go to if we want to demand that the New Era, what we have done is wrong. It is wrong because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But as it is, we are just saying the editorial stories about NAST, stories about the judiciary,
parliamentary.
How do you know that it's a personal thing, even?
Do you want to react to that, Zoe, in any way?
I fully agree with you. We are not having enough critical conversations that is going to build the media and the media sector. But it's not just building the media and the media sector, it's also, I think, a really, really low level of media literacy amongst parliamentarians who are making policies and setting the boundaries on a lot of issues that deals with public information. And the flow of information, and then just the general public, because I mean, we are now looking at a data protection bill. We are talking about an artificial intelligence policy, and I'm very concerned that we are not going to develop progressive policy frameworks, you know, that is going to, you know, create that kind of environment and free environment for journalists to do their work. But there's one thing that I need to say. Whilst we have to have these critical conversations, and I hope that the Editors Forum will also come to the fore and make its position clear. I mean, I was told that the Editors Forum hasn't spoken out now because it hasn't seen this letter of suspension, but I asked for the letter of suspension too, and I was told in no uncertain terms that it can't be made public. So are you going to wait for something that cannot be made public? That's another issue altogether. But you know, right now we've got the media union,
Yes.
also up in arms. So it's very, very clear that there's a great level of discontent in the sector. It's a sector that is becoming increasingly vulnerable. And we have to have those critical conversations. And I mean, to all the editors, especially now in this particular context, I mean, so much has been unearthed in the last just a couple of weeks pertaining to the media. If you are not going to stand by your journalists, if you are not going to ensure the safety and the security of your journalists, then you have no business in media.
Yeah.
So let's start from there and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
There are times when I'm at pains to understand the editors for forum. What do they stand for? Maybe I need to be educated. Because I am worried that the association, rightly or wrongly so, they are very active in this
The union.
issue. Yes. They've been talking up about it, they've been raising it, and the editors forum has been quiet. What exactly do they stand for? Excuse me if I don't understand. But I just want to understand. Isn't this the time when they must engage to say, guys, we are editors here, we lead teams.
Yeah.
So can we just understand what is going on here? Because I've also read where they are saying we cannot comment now because we don't know what is going on. Is it such a very difficult thing where they can call their counterpart to say, either it's Christoph has been an editor for years and I've worked with him. Jonathan also, guys. What is this?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
My biggest concern is
provide
we've
clarity.
got juniors who are fighting for a senior, right, an executive.
Yeah.
If you are a managing editor, you are an executive. So you have got your journalists fighting for you and your counterparts. They are quiet. Maybe they are doing something that we don't know.
It's a fair point, Wanda. As editors, we've deliberated a little bit. And that has actually been sort of when you read between the lines, the general feeling is that, we are not fully aware of the full facts, and therefore we can't jump the gun and make statements about things that we are not. But I think at the broadest level that you can think of, there ought to be room for pronouncement. There ought to be a level where we say, okay, fine, we do not know the facts, but on the face of it, for example, this doesn't look good. And we therefore urge New Era to maybe furnish us with more details so that we can fully comprehend, but the way it looks now, something. Yeah. So I'm part of that. We are a collective. People like myself, Tanganya Mpadi, there was another colleague there, I can't remember. We have said, let's say something. And I hope, but it's also now very late because as we record this conversation now, Jonathan was suspended a week ago already. So do you pronounce yourself 2 weeks later? Getting beaten to this whole thing by the union?
And if, as you say, you don't have all the facts and you all the pieces of the puzzle are not present and clear, you are guided by principles and you pronounce yourself on the basis of those principles. And that more than anything else is going to ensure that level of respect from journalists, from the government, because you see, we issued our statement and it's probably not well received by certain people, but at least you know where we stand. And We can agree or disagree, but you know our point of departure.
Absolutely. We go for a quick break and then return with this vibrant conversation.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
The conversation continues on the agenda. Now, the Namibian had a very interesting cartoon on Friday. It says that of the president on the podium announcing to the world how free the press is in Namibia, and then under the podium is the New Era scandal, if you like, saga. And on Thursday, I had Dr. Alfredo Hengari on one of my shows, and I was asking him why is it important really that we continue to go to platforms like the UN General Assembly. And he used media freedom as one of the reasons to say Namibia has so much to teach the world. We are exemplary to the world in so many things, including freedom of the press, and therefore we need to go to platforms like this and actually preach some of these things. At the height of what is happening at New Era, do you see some sort of contradiction there, or it has nothing to do with each other?
The lines are blurred here, Trevor. We need to know who is calling the shots.
Yeah.
Is it the New Era management? Is it the board? Is it the Minister of Information?
Yeah.
Or is there any directive from the State House?
Yeah.
Again, we are in the dark. We don't know.
In the dark, left to speculate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can speculate as much as we want.
Yeah.
Unless we've got all the facts. Who is calling the shots?
Yeah.
Now, we might say, President this and that and that. He was there, talking about what he knows and what he believes in, and somebody else is doing something here. So we need to have all this so that when we have the conversation, we have got all the facts. But otherwise, without these facts,
do you think, Wanda, that sorry to disrupt you there. Do you think, Wanda, that in this Republic of Namibia, it is possible, and it's also the same question that I put to Dr. Hengari when he was here, to say, look, is it possible for a very, very drastic action like that to be taken by Mr. Maletsky just autonomously, on his own? Is it possible for New Era as an entity, you could now include the board here, a drastic action like that, that is so damaging to the reputation not only of that institution, but also of the country? Because we have seen now international organizations also issuing statements condemning what happened. Is it possible to take that risk at an organizational level? Or again, I know we are speculating.
Yeah, we are.
But MICT came out, they say, no, we have nothing to do with it. Dr. Hengari in Friday's paper for Namibian Sun, no, we have nothing to do with it. But the intricacy for me is that the judiciary thing it involves the president, because the president appoints judges, of course, on the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission. But when you question that transparency, you're also, by extension, questioning the president. So that scares me. I hope really that it doesn't stretch to that level.
And this is exactly why I'm saying someone might be calling the shots.
Yeah.
Pass on the message to the next person and the next person, and then it ends up with Christoph to act, right? So it might be possible that someone from the presidents got so concerned and then said, guys, this is not what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Or someone from the ministry got so concerned. And this is why earlier on I said, if there were some warnings given, if there were some meetings held before this drastic measure was taken, then we might understand that maybe Beukes was arrogant. But if there was nothing like that, then he was within what he believed is his job, the description of his job. But to answer you, it may not be possible. It may be possible that people will act without the president knowing. Yeah. And all what he will know is, we have done this to protect you. Yeah. And what can you say?
David, if I may, to respond to your original question, yes, Namibia is very highly regarded, and I can confirm this at international fora. Namibia is seen as a best practice, a shining example of how it should be done. But even that said, and Ms. Angari, Dr. Angari is saying that Namibia has a responsibility to go out and share its experiences and to further promote press freedom and encourage others to do so, which it does on these platforms. I still believe that Namibia is not doing enough, because there have been opportunities where our government could have acted very publicly and very decisively in support of media freedom or the repression of journalists elsewhere in the region, on the continent, globally. And I'm waiting for that moment. I mean, I understand diplomatic relations and territorial integrity and such things. But if you are really committed to this principle, then speak out when media freedoms are repressed elsewhere. That is a kind of leadership that our government potentially can show and play.
Absolutely. I agree. I couldn't agree more with you, Zoe, on that.
Sorry, Tefo.
Yes.
Sorry to cut
please.
you in.
Yes.
Zoe just gave me this idea. America was ranked the 42nd last year. The UK is the 24th, right? But these are the two countries that will be heavily on countries that don't have media freedom. Is it not ironic then that the 42nd ranked country and the 24th ranked country, right, beaten by Namibia, they will be concerned that Namibia doesn't have press freedom? No, I'm just saying this to give a picture of how things are, right? They ranked badly, 42nd and the 24th, right? They will be the first ones to come to say, you have messed up. Then Namibia is ranked what?
I think 22nd or 20...
First in Africa and 22nd globally.
So there are these dynamics, Zoe, which we need to understand. If we are going to make things right here, and if we are going to demand whatever we want to demand from the government, we need to have all this information, and we need to understand exactly what we want and how we want it done. And this is an opportunity. And if we let this opportunity pass us by, then we will wait for another suspension, and then we will start again. So this is the opportunity where then we must say, like NMT and every other organization that is involved, guys, let us look into this, let us fix this once and for all, so that there won't be another Jonathan Beukes.
Yeah. One of the, in 2020, something very similar, but not as drastic happened. State House press conference on COVID-19, those briefings of the president. A journalist, Edward Mumbu from Nampa at the time, he's with New Era now, and he was actually the one who wrote these judiciary pieces, stood up and said, I have a question that is not related to the subject, to COVID-19 today. Do I have the floor? The organizer said, yes, please go ahead. Then he shot off a few questions around fish rot, the appointment of the ACC executive director at the time, and whatnot, the removal of Nelius Becker from serious crime investigations, I think, or so, to forensics, where he is today. And he landed in trouble because everything just went okay. Everybody departs. He goes to the office. He found his bosses already having been called to say, we are not pleased with that boy. And the news editor had to summon Eddie Mumbu to say, we are not pleased with what you did. So when you see things like what is happening at New Era, you feel like there's been a trend, this behavior by state actors to actually bully and silence journalists. Do you think, Zoe, that things like that, even in incidents where the state was not involved, they may be seen to have affected or to have actually contributed to what we are seeing now?
You are speaking of previous examples, so if there are previous examples, it means that there is a trend.
Yes.
And that is concerning. In our statement, we were very clear in perceptions about what state-owned or publicly funded media, the perceptions that they should be more amenable to government institutions and be less critical in their reporting, but that is not the case because of their development agenda. Because development is the antithesis of corruption, of wrongdoing, of malpractice. So it puts an even greater burden on publicly funded media to be critical. So I think that there is cause for concern. Very clearly there is cause for concern, and as you have said, Wanda, if we just leave this to be and move on and let it go by and not act, or at least not take real substantive action here, it is going to recur, and our media freedoms are going to become watered down.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, at this point in time, I mean, we specifically speaking about this incident, in the last week, that's happening at New Era, but there has been, since independence, this, deep desire and ongoing campaign to make our national broadcaster a true public service broadcaster, because it is not that. It is many things, but it is not a public service broadcaster. So, and no wonder has got concerns about, yes, the private media is not perfect either, but there are certain concessions that you can give the private media, because the government has a very particular mandate in terms of its responsibility to the citizenry. Those in business, the parameters are different.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, Trevor, that you mentioned the incident during the COVID time. You remember there was also an uproar here when the other media houses were left out, the State House.
Yes, I remember.
You remember?
Yes.
And the president asked it, where's the media? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So this is where we need to be very clear. We need to know who's calling the shots here. Is it him? Or are we just assuming that since he's the big boss, it's him? So if the Mumbu issue, who called Nampa bosses to say, we are not happy with that boy? Because then when the issue of the other media being left out of State House, right? And there was a lot of noise. And he himself, I don't know whether he didn't know or he knew, but he asked it, where is the other media? Because he was accustomed to having all of them there. So should we say that was like, he didn't know it, or he knew it, or he realized last minute that they were supposed to be here, but we messed up? So we need to understand all these things without us making our assumptions. Who is calling these shots?
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
they have direct orders from the top?
Yeah.
Or there are people who want to praise him, to make him happy, to say, we have done this for you, for your own good, we are protecting you.
Yeah.
So who calls the shots here, and how far?
You're concerned about probably the various levels of gatekeepers around the president, the presidency.
Yeah.
Yes, and understandably so. But as citizens, we refer to the first citizen.
Yep.
And that's where the buck stops.
Yeah.
And where we want the ultimate accountability from.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy burden to bear, but that comes with a job, doesn't it?
Yeah. Father of the Namibian House.
Now, in this case, if I may ask, this has happened. Suppose he didn't know, and at the UN he was speaking about him being the champion. Should he come in now and say, guys, this is not it? Or he needs to sit back and say, I want to sit through this and then see the outcome. What is the way forward now?
Yeah, and that is exactly the question that I wanted also to pose in closing, to say that what now?
What now?
So for me, I think the president, because also there are also, you have to tread carefully also. It's supposed to be, because legally the president cannot also interfere in the affairs of New Era, of
That's
MBC.
why there's the board.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a line of command. He could speak to the minister speaks to the board speaks to the CEO, and then, without interfering directly. But if the president says, I want him returned, that would also be problematic because it's also not his call to make. It's not his mandate. But it has really placed him in a very awkward position now, champion, and under the championship of this man, our president, we have things like this happening. And like we are saying, he is hot off the press in the United States saying, we are these champions. And then you get this. So it's almost as if he's being undermined by someone within the system, because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and it's crazy. But in closing, very briefly, what must happen? People are saying, people like Zoe are saying, essentially that the decision must be reversed. The Union of the Journalists is saying the decision must be reversed. Do you just reverse it, or do you allow due process now to say, okay, there must be a disciplinary hearing, assuming there are charges? Because we also don't know properly whether there are charges and what charges are they. If there are no charges, obviously, then the natural thing to do for me is to return him to work. But if there are charges, do you then say, okay, drop the charges and return him to work, or do you say see through the entire process and see whether the man is exonerated or not?
Well, in our statement, we didn't ask for the decision to be reversed. What we called for is transparency and accountability. Because we don't know what all the elements are here, all the elements that are at play. But, as I said, right from the get-go, we are left to speculate because there is no level of transparency and accountability from those whom we believe should provide it. Yes, it could be, it's considered a labor issue, an internal matter, but the implications of this decision is so far-reaching that some level of transparency and accountability is not, it's not asking too much. Talk to us. Don't undermine the media. Don't undermine the public. Be honest.
Absolutely. I think in closing for you, Wanda, I have to ask you something a bit more different. What is the likely implication of this issue on the general perception of Namibia as a shining example of free press, and what do you anticipate in the rankings in May next year?
Yeah, obviously, I would want to believe that the Namibia will drop further. And this has actually shown the light here.
Yeah.
To say, although they are talking about being the shining beam and whatever in media freedom and all the other stuff, there are things that are happening underneath.
Yeah.
The rankings will be affected, yes, of course. And it will be very difficult for anyone to stand up now and say, we are the best. Because then if you stand up and say that, there will be, but what about this?
Yeah.
But for me, it would have made sense if someone had come up to say, this story is misrepresenting the facts. This one is misrepresenting the facts. Therefore, they are wrong, but no one is saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's yeah. So
sorry,
so it's to try and predict what will happen now. Again, we are sliding on thin ice. Yeah. Anything can happen, but it depends on how the new era management is going to handle it.
Yeah.
And it also depends on how the Ministry of Information, as well as the presidents, how they are going to handle the whole issue. Yeah. It's not enough to say we had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's not.
I think it was last year that we brought up this issue and generated some discussion about that moment when the media finds itself in the crosshairs between politics and power. Yeah. And to me, this is a very clear example of that. Yeah. So some very critical conversations need to be had. But one of the things that I also wanted to mention is we also have to look at the much bigger context here. This is happening as we are preparing for a very important election. If you are going to hollow out the media, then how is the media going to play that? It's really, really important role in election coverage, in facilitating reporting, in probably one of these, the most important, actions in our democracy.
So instead of having a watchdog, we might end up with a lapdog. That's the biggest concern.
It's a good one.
Because, like I said earlier on, depending on how this is going to be handled, if anything happens, if they decide to let Jonathan go, the person who is going to take over will have a tough time because they won't make independent judgments. Yeah. And like you are saying, Zoe, we are going towards an election. So before running any sensitive story, they will then have to seek, can we run this? Can we run this? And then someone, somewhere, will be telling them, don't run that, don't run that. Yeah. So this is one of the things that might happen. Apart from the rankings that we are so scared of, that they might drop.
There are more serious.
Yes, but it's the quality. The quality of the news might be affected. And the independence of the journalists as well might be affected. Yeah. Because everyone else will be scared, like you were saying, if this can happen to a managing editor, what about an intern?
Absolutely.
So it's broad.
Yeah, I hear you. Zoe, thank you for making time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, both of you. Wonderful. That was tonight's show with Zoe Titus and Wanda Guchu. Thank you for watching.